Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming in for a spooky Halloween story time. I said I was going to do the vampires, and it's just perfect timing. I mean, Halloween, spooky season, October. It's flipping cold outside, but it's the perfect time for chili and fudge making. So good. Anyways, I did want to bring you these. It's actually going to be a couple separate story times. So this is the first one. So before I start the story, let's get into all this good stuff here. If you have not subscribed to us, you're missing out on so much. We just had the greatest live last night in our after hours show. It was so funny at the very end. So go check that one out. And please hit that subscribe button for us. We are almost at 2,100 and we are trying super hard to get there. So please hit that button. If you've had an encounter and would like to come on and talk to me and Wayne about it, we would absolutely love to hear it. You can contact him at Wayne@paranormalworldproductions.com or myself, Tiffany at paranormalworldproductions.com. And while we are on that bandwagon, head over to paranormalworldproductions.com. There are, I think I counted 9 shows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, excuse me, 7. You have Sasquatch Odyssey, this show, Paranormal Odyssey, that Bigfoot podcast is over there, which is super stellar. If you haven't listened to the teaser, please go listen to the teaser. They are dropping 5 episodes on October 13th. So please get in there and get hooked up for that. You have the Basement Hangout, True Crime Odysseys there, the Kentucky X-Files, and Weird Encounters, which is on actually Untold Radio 2. So, head over there, show your support, pick up some merch. We would appreciate that. And as well, let me find it. I usually have everything all lined up, but it's almost a Monday, so we're starting early. Head over to Reaper Apparel Co. Any purchase you make using the promo code Paranormal Odyssey will save you 10%. So head over there and pick you up some merch from there as well. Save you some money in the process. It's just a really good organization to support. And as I've said in the past, I understand that the picture is a little off-putting, and not everybody is all about, wearing the Grim Reaper or skulls or whatever, but it's really the message behind that. We are not promised another day, and we really need to grab life by the horns, and Reaper Dan is such a great guy. So head over there, save yourself some money, and get you some merch. All right. All of that aside now, it comes out of the book Monsters in Virginia, and it's by L.B. Taylor Jr. It's a really great book. It was only like $13, and it's just got so much stuff in it. So anyways, enough of that. Let's start. Is it possible that in at least 2 known isolated cases, vampires once roamed the dark woods of the Old Dominion, creating havoc among the populace? How can this be? Isn't a vampire a myth, a fictional character invented by the macabre imaginations of such writers as Bram Stoker, author of the classical novel Dracula? Hasn't the legend been perpetuated through the years by scores of black and white Hollywood movies featuring a cloaked creature with sharp fangs who escapes a coffin in the dead of night seeking new victims? And if they do exist, aren't such monsters confined to the remote mountainous sections of Eastern Europe? You would think, but not necessarily so. A vampire, says Italian author Ornella Volta, who wrote a definitive book on the subject, is actually a dead person who survives his or her own death by feeding on the blood of the living. It also means anyone with a thirst for human blood. The definition is also applied to the living who disturb the peace of the grave, as well as to the dead who arise to trouble the sleep of the living. In their book, Strange Stories and Amazing Facts, the editors of Reader's Digest noted that travelers who visited remote parts of Transylvania in the 16th century returned with strange and horrifying tales of creatures that were neither living nor dead. Creepy. Creatures that left their haunts at night and feasted on human blood. The book describes the creatures' appearance. They were said to be recognizable by their gaunt appearance and pale complexions. They have full red lips and pointed canine teeth, gleaming eyes with a hypnotic gaze, long, sharp fingernails, eyebrows that meet, and hair on the palms of their hands. That's interesting. I've never heard that part before. It also goes on to say their breath is said to be foul, and their diet of blood endows them with superhuman strength, despite their cadaverous and emaciated appearance. Some historians have contended that such fictional characters as Stoker's Dracula were in fact based on real-life persons. The one most often mentioned is Wallachian Prince Vlad IV, also known as Vlad the Impaler, who ruled 15th century Romania with an iron fist and a sharpened stake. He is estimated to have tortured and killed hundreds during his sadistic reign. According to Charles Berlitz, author of The World of Strange Phenomena, Vlad would dine among his writhing victims, supping and bathing in their life fluids. Well, that's utterly disgusting. So terribly did his reputation grip the countryside that when he died in 1477, rumors surfaced that he rose from the dead in search of even more blood. Berlitz concluded that such stories, based at least in part on fact, may have contributed to the popular notion that the only way to stop a vampire's deadly depredations was to plunge a wooden stake through its still living corpse. Such speculative fear was first brought to America by the early settlers and was further inflamed in Virginia with a 19th century outbreak of grave robbing. It was amid such a swirling atmosphere of horror that a legend of a real-life vampire in the Old Dominion first surfaced. Consider a 1923 Washington Post newspaper article written by Gorman Hendricks and reprinted several times, including by John Alexander in his 1983 book, Ghosts, Washington's Most Famous Ghost Stories. The preface reads, "The white-clad figure of a beautiful girl, her face distorted by a pair of wolf-like fangs, undead as the result of her own death at the hands of a dreaded vampire more than 70 years ago, leaving her vault at midnight and herself turned into a vampire, preying on the surrounding neighborhood." Hendricks apparently interviewed a number of longtime residents in an area that included part of the District of Columbia in the Northern Virginia countryside. He wrote, "These are not the days when the sheeted dead did shriek, but according to reputable citizens, are actually happenings in the region. Volumes have been written regarding the ability of the dead to return to Earth. Arguments, pro and con, have filled pages in the newspapers. Scientists have declared that there is a perfectly natural explanation for any phenomena of this kind." Well, I don't know how you would explain really vampire activity as naturally occurring, but we'll go with that. Sure. Others equally equipped mentally have asserted that the dead return. He continues, "With all these pages of matter to draw from, it is not the intention of the writer to attempt to prove a case neither for or against the return of the dead, but simply to narrate facts gathered from reputable sources. Readers may draw their own conclusions." Hendricks began his narrative with a recounting of a decades-old tradition, saying that the most mystifying story gathered in the course of his investigation centered in a nearby hamlet. He didn't identify the exact location, but it was presumed to be in northern Virginia in the vicinity of the Potomac River. He noted that 7 decades earlier, it had been a thriving community, but today, as of 1923, was a half-forgotten spot in a near wilderness as the result of the ghastly tales of a female vampire who declared to roam the surrounding country and to whom at least one death is credited. Through interviews with surviving old-timers, Hendricks founded the enduring belief was that the girl was killed by a vampire because her body was found with the plain marks of 2 fangs in her throat. Thus, she, despite leading an exemplary life on Earth, was condemned through her unusual death to roam about as a vampire, walking at certain periods, clad in her burial vestments and preying on those most dear to her. Hendricks based part of his report on an interview with Lou Jensen, who told him that he had lived in the village at the time of 1850. Jensen said that once, as he passed by the almost forgotten vault in a dense thicket of woods, he heard a door creak on a rusty hinge and saw a figure emerge. When he first told of his chilling experience, he was not believed. Shocker. It was dismissed as a figment of his imagination. But then, soon after, a groom in his stables failed to appear for work, and a search was conducted. The man's lifeless body was found lying near the old tomb. The imprint of 2 sharp teeth on his throat was plainly evident. This caused a nightly watch to be maintained on the vault for several days. Then, as Hendricks described, on the eve of St. George, while a storm was brewing and the flashes of lightning played over the somber structure, the rusty door again creaked and a figure crept stealthily out and glided through the woods in the direction of a mansion, the girl's home. Witnesses were too alarmed to do more than stand and gaze in horror at the shape of the fair girl who had but recently been placed in the tomb. The next day, one man ventured to examine the scene. He went into the vault and found that a huge stone slab had been displaced and flowers had been strewn about. Several others then followed and looked inside the coffin. They discovered that the dead girl's cheeks were rosy and her lips a bright red. You know, that's a little disturbing on itself. I mean, I'm just saying. But horror struck the watchers when they saw her front teeth were as long and sharp as the teeth of a wolf. There were no more frightening incidents for several months. Then another person who had been passing by the vault during a stormy night. Why is it always in a storm? Always, always. The rain is always pouring, the wind is always blowing, and there is always lightning. And then there's vampires. Just an observation. Another person who had been passing by the vault during a stormy night said he saw the same figure emerge, but instead of floating off, it turned, gazed at him, and uttered a terrible laugh. Holy cow. The laughs, you guys, I can't with the laughs. The man said, as the image passed him, he caught the foul odor of the charnel house. Possibly frightened beyond expression, this witness died within a week. Wow. Over time, the girl's parents moved away and the house and tomb began to crumble and decay. The reputation of the area became so sinister that few dared walk nearby even in the daytime. And I don't blame them. I wouldn't either. No, thank you. It's a whole bunch of nope. Long after the house's abandonment, there were reports of a horrible figure peering out of an upstairs window. As Hendricks describes it, the door of the vault now hangs on rusty hinges, and the marble slabs that mark the final resting place of those who passed on long since have been obliterated by the hand of time. Large sections of broken sandstone that once covered the tombs of the dead lie about the dank vault, now given over to the creatures that creep and crawl, he concludes. Such legends are unusual in this country. The original story of the vampire coming from Transylvania, where it is believed at a certain time of the year that the dead come forth and evil holds sway for a brief time on earth. It is then that the undead come to their own and may work their will on the living. No, thank you. No. But that was really interesting to hear about all the, how it started in Virginia and a couple of the stories. And there's a couple more after this that I'm going to come on. And it's going to be sooner than 9 days because I realized it had been 9 days since I said I was going to get on here. But went a little longer than usual, but it's okay. We're having a good time. But thank you guys so much for coming and for listening. And again, if you haven't subscribed to this show, it is super fun. It is super cool. We have such a good time. And we do still have the $1.99 membership that you can subscribe to. And there's perks that go along with that. Our show is free. It will always be free. But this membership for $1.99 affords you so much extra. So we just really want to get that out there to you guys. But again, thank you for coming, and I will be posting the next video in this series in just a few days. Thank you, and have a good rest of your evening.